everybody. Scott Fisher here, once again with you, season 2 with Senior Resource Connectors. We're putting a wrap on season 2 today, but I couldn't do that without having a conversation with my buddy and attorney Scott Hodges. Scott practices law at Dyer Bregman Ferris Wong in Carter. Did I get all that?
You got them all.
And Scott specializes in probate law and working with families through some of the most challenging aspects of aging and even in postmortem situations. And so these are very, very important issues. Scott, my brothers and I have some challenges in front of us that our mother is in her 80s. She's never done any pre-planning and stuff like that. I have some powers of attorney and things done. But man, we need help, and I imagine there's a lot of families out there that need help. So just want to say thank you for joining us and welcome aboard. It's good to see you today.
Okay, my pleasure. Hopefully I can impart some education.
For those of you that are maybe this is your first time to tune in to the series, Connectors was formed 3 years ago as a specific with a specific mission in mind, and that was to reach primarily the adult children, those of us that find ourselves in that age slot 45 to 65 that are watching things change in our parents and our loved ones. And it's most often our parents, but sometimes can be our spouses, of course. And there's just a lot of twists and turns in the road and challenges that families face. And so Connectors pulled together some of the very best providers from all kinds of walks of life, law firms, Medicare and insurance specialists, healthcare providers, home health, hospice, placement specialists, real estate. All of those different services and partners are underneath the umbrella of Senior Resource Connectors. And Dyer Bregman and Ferris, Wong and Carter with Scott have been our partners since the very beginning. And so we are just super grateful. And I just want to point out how much work and how much impact Scott and his firm have made in the community for a long time. The firm started back. Mike's dad was the founding partner, wasn't
he? Yes. So that would be Chuck Dyer, who he helped author our Arizona's probate code that was adopted probably 40 some years ago. And he then partnered with Scott Ferris, and then the Mike Dyer, who's now our managing partner, ended up going to law school, and our firm's just grown almost exponentially since then.
Wow. That's a lot of folks you've had your hand out to help over the years as a firm, and each of you guys as individuals in the firm. So thank you, and we're grateful to have your relationship and partnership these last 3 years with Connectors. It's made a big difference as we've been able to move our message out. With that being said, I encounter stuff all the time where people don't have powers of attorney. I just mentioned that Mom and I had to redo her powers when she moved here from Ohio. Talk to me a little bit about what is a power of attorney. When people hear that might be a term that people hear but don't understand, Scott, and how does that help me when I might be caring for someone aging?
Sure. Before I really dive into what is a power of attorney, I think is just right off the bat say anybody over the age of 18, I think is a good candidate to have a power of attorney in place. It doesn't mean that you need the help now, but they're in place for when you do.
Yeah.
But when we talk about something like a power of attorney, I always find it helpful to start with a universal terminology, so we're all using kind of the same terms. The roles with a power of attorney, there's two main roles. The first one is, and most important, is the principal. The principal is the person who signs the power of attorney. They are granting another person the authority to make decisions on their behalf. So kind of to dispel any misgivings some people might have, the principal maintains control And they're the ones who have absolute authority to revoke it at any time. And the other party to the power of attorney is the agent. I like to think of them as they're the mule, they're the workhorse. They're the ones who are doing the work on behalf of the principal. So when you think about it that way, the agent is not necessarily, once they say, I'm now the agent, I'm the attorney in fact, I can do whatever I want. That's not the case. Everything you do has to fit within the powers granted to that agent, and everything has to be done in the best interest of the principal.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So,
I think I have heard people tell me, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, that or what I've heard is that people are fearful that when they sign their powers, that they automatically give up their rights. And you're telling us again right now that's not the case, right? Nobody just take over my world.
correct. Yeah. Powers of attorney, they're in place as long as the principal wants them in place. They could be revoked at any time by the principal. There's different types.
Yeah.
There's healthcare power of attorney, which can deal with any variety of acts or powers dealing with the principal's body, if you will. So with a medical power of attorney, you can grant your agent the authority to make medical appointments for you, to make medical decisions for you, to make placement decisions. What's the best place for the principal to live in, whether it's at home with extra help, whether that's in a assisted living facility, memory care, etc. So that's what a healthcare power of attorney takes care of. And then its corollary is the financial power of attorney. So that's dealing with any sorts of the principal's finances. And people can be involved in all sorts of different financial endeavors, whether it's as simple as your, checking and being able to manage the checking and savings account. But it could be investments, rental properties. Some people have their own businesses, or they have partnerships. So a financial power of attorney, if those sorts of powers are granted, allows the agent to manage all aspects of the person's finances.
When would one's power of attorney, the authority, go into play? Like, what's the process to that? Is there something medical? Is it legal? What happens?
So that's all in the terms of the power of attorney itself. Generally, you have either a power of attorney that is immediate. So upon signature, these powers are now granted to the agent.
Gotcha.
And then another general type is what we call springing. So you only spring into being upon a certain event, typically the incapacity or, as determined by a doctor, somebody who can no longer make those medical or financial decisions. And that's when we started off the interview, I mentioned that everybody over the age of 18 probably should consider having powers of attorney, even if they're the springing type.
Yeah.
Where they lie dormant until they're needed.
Okay.
I have two young adult children, and from the time they turned 18, I worked with them to get their own powers of attorney in place, because at 18, the law considers you an adult and you have agency to make all the decisions on your behalf, and a parent no longer has that authority.
Right. In that situation, there's a lot of families anymore, Scott, that unfortunately divorce is a reality. Parents have split. They might have new spouses. Young adult child gets hit by a car, gets in an accident, has an event of some kind. And now you got, without having the child designate you could really have a collision of the two parties, right? Again, and so you're making a great point. You mentioned the work capacity, and I've in my work I've banged into this issue more than once, where someone needed psychiatric care. They were a senior, they had some delusional psychosis, maybe a delirium related to a urinary tract infection, which is not an uncommon thing, and they needed to be hospitalized in a behavioral health facility, and there was no mental health power of attorney in place. Kids were forced then to go to guardianship court to get guardianship and or conservatorship. Talk about, could you for a second, just the mental health aspect and why Arizona has the law that it has?
Sure, yeah. And I've, in my practice, I've dealt with those sorts of emergency situations where the principal, the person who ended up needing extra care, they had both healthcare and financial powers of attorney in place,
Right.
but they didn't have the extra layer of a mental health care power of attorney, which in Arizona, that requires a specific authorization by the principal to make a placement of that principal in a level 1 behavioral health facility.
Right.
And if you don't have that extra mental health care power of attorney authority, like you said,
Yeah.
to get them properly placed and receive appropriate treatment from a behavioral psychologist, you have to go through a very expensive process of court-appointed guardianship.
Right.
The probate courts are there to take care of and to help assist in that, but it's a court process, and like any court process, it's costly and requires a lot of hoops to be followed.
Right.
To make sure that all the due processes are followed. And having just an attorney review the powers of attorney to make sure that you have that extra authority, mental health care authority, could potentially save a lot of time. And it's not just the money, but if you don't get the treatment on time, things could exacerbate.
Can really get out of hand. And I've unfortunately been a part of those, on that other side, when the hospitals called me and needed emergency placement, and they're in the middle of the court proceedings just to get the person stabilized enough to be able to be placed in a memory care setting or something like that. I'm thinking about where, like, when someone needs or they think they need the powers of attorney, where do you point them? Do they come to an attorney all the time? I see these online legal things that people pop up about, and it saves me, $1,000 to do it this way or that way. So where do people go? How do people get those powers drawn up for them?
Sure. There's probably a number of sources, the 3 general sources. One is on our Arizona Attorney General website. They do have some forms that they're very serviceable. They cover 80+% of the issues that a person may need a power of attorney for, and there should be both a healthcare and a financial power of attorney on the AZ Attorney General's website that you can download, fill out, have the principal sign, have a witness notarized, etc. But those forms don't cover everything. I'm fairly certain they do not have those extra mental health care powers that we were mentioning, but they cover the majority of issues that one might need. You can also get things off the internet. I caution people to be very careful of downloading something off the internet as a power of attorney, because powers of attorney are not one size fits all.
Yeah.
the form you download off the internet, because the internet is worldwide, it may not even be from Arizona or whatever jurisdiction you happen to be in.
And this mental health issue is a big one for us because we are in Arizona, and you might buy a package that doesn't include it, thinking you've done all the right things,
Right.
and you're out of luck.
Right, right. So downloading a form off the internet, just be careful. Does it follow your state's laws? Does it cover what you need and not have what you don't need?
Yeah.
Honestly, if you're going to not go to an attorney for your POAs, personally, I believe you'd be better served using the forms off the AZ Attorney General's site. Those have been vetted. We know that they are acceptable in Arizona. But of course, if you're really looking for specific powers of attorney, an attorney is your best source.
That's the right way to go to really craft the right individualized approach for you, right?
Right. They will individualize them. You can, by going to an attorney, you should have confidence that the principal has the capacity to know what it is that they're signing. And that, I want to make this as a very important distinction. If you are to get powers of attorney from an attorney, the principal will be the client of that attorney, not the child or sibling or spouse.
Sure.
Who says, I need to have powers of attorney over this other person. You don't, again, we go back, it's the principal. The principal is in charge.
Yeah.
So an attorney will do an analysis to make sure that the principal understands, has the sufficient capacity to sign what it is they're signing, that they understand that they are granting authority to somebody else.
Yeah. There's an important distinction that I would love to just get your thought on for a second, and that is impairment versus incapacity. I have a lot of people in my practice that have some mild cognitive impairment, but they have not lost capacity yet. Could you talk about the gap there, the distinction?
Sure. So having, in legal terms, we call it testamentary capacity.
Okay.
It's essentially the ability to understand that what you're signing is a testamentary instrument, be that a power of attorney, a will, a trust, an advance directive. All these are categorized as testamentary instruments. So there are tests to kind of determine that. There's legal tests and there's medical tests. And an attorney can do the legal test to see, do they truly understand what it is that what they would be signing? Can they verbally express that? And I know at our firm, if we have a questionable, it's a question as to, does this person truly have testamentary capacity?
Right.
We will refer that person to go to a medical provider. And oftentimes, if it's a close call, that medical provider will be either a geriatric psychologist or a neuropsychologist who can really go beneath and dig down and see,
right,
does this person have the requisite capacity, the understanding? Because you mentioned somebody who has limitations. We see that a lot with our elderly loved ones, that they start to forget things. They may repeat themselves. They may develop kind of some idiosyncrasies that they didn't have before. And those may still allow the person to understand what they're signing.
Yeah.
But,
agree.
So when in doubt, go to a professional, whether that's an attorney or some medical professional.
Yeah. And as we kind of bring this in for landing, I wanted to maybe cover one more aspect with you, and from your perspective, I'm sure it's vast. Um, Issues, potential problems with POAs that you run into, or you may have seen that have now ended up in litigation or end up in a messy situation. You want to talk about that, maybe?
So as you can, as we kind of talked about the difference between the principal and the
Mhm.
agent. The agent is by accepting the role as the agent under the power of attorney, you become a fiduciary. And I know you and I understand what that term means, but a fiduciary is, it is the highest level of duties the law imparts on somebody.
Mhm.
And everything you do has to be in the best interest of the principal, not the agent. And as a large part of my practice is in probate litigation. So I've seen some doozies. I see, and oftentimes they're good intentioned, but they just, the agent doesn't understand that they wear more than one hat. They may be the child of the principal that they're the agent for, but they're also a fiduciary to them. A classic issue is when so-called loved ones, so-called family members who have their elderly relatives sign that POA when the principal is already incapacitated. We kind of talked about that means they don't understand what it is they're signing.
Right.
And then the agent substitutes their own judgment for the principal's judgment, oftentimes in favor of the agent.
Mhm.
I see it as, it may be the adult child that's taking care of the parent. They're the ones taking them to appointments and making sure that they're fed and that their medications are laid out for them. And for whatever reason, maybe it's just human nature, but they tend to get a sense of entitlement and thinking that, well, mom and dad they would have liked me to have that check written to me. They would have, I've been working so hard, I should, take a vacation on
I'll
their,
just move into mom and dad's house
I'll
now.
just move into the house, right. And you have to constantly step back and think, is that in the best interest of mom, dad, whomever the principal is? If I'm writing a check to myself for services that are well above and beyond the services I'm providing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't need that car anymore, so
Yeah.
I'll just take it. Well, that's
Sign it
not
over
in
to
their
me.
best interest anymore. So,
I've
yeah,
always wanted
I
a
see.
68 Camaro. I think I'd like that.
Yes. So yeah, I definitely see a lot of issues.
Yeah.
I think it
It,
just boils back down to make sure that as the agent, you're doing everything that's in the best interest of
yeah.
the principal.
You guys, so many of us, our parents, and this was my situation. My mother lived out of state, Scott, and when she moved here, there was almost like a checklist of things I needed to do for her. One was to update her powers because I knew about the mental health requirement, and of course, the last time she'd had her powers done was in the 90s or something, and now she was here in 2014 or 15 and moved here, and I needed to be named as her POA to help her in her walk. Um, and so a lot of families we give them that requirement, or that, I don't know, requirement, but guidance to say, hey, look, here's, we ask them to get a new primary care physician. They have to get new Medicare insurance. There's just a checklist of things when we have to bring our parents closer to us. If that's your situation and you're listening to this, we can help you prescribe the remedies to all of those issues and help you forecast what's on the horizon. And yeah, you can get things done off the website. Yeah, you can go to azag.gov and get those. But as Scott said, if you want to be sure you've got it customized and right for your family, see an attorney like Scott, who is well versed in the law and will do everything possible to protect the principal, and of course allow for the agent to make the appropriate decisions when it comes to that time. So we could talk all day, and And it would be fun just to, I've also been chuckled with some of my buddies that have been at this for a while, that wouldn't it be cool to just have like a book or maybe a, like a reality show sometimes of of some of these issues and things you've gone to court over. Um, and we don't want to make light of the situation, Scott. It's to illustrate, bring them to the light, to illustrate why it's so important and educate people on why it's so important to get the right kind of protection for their family, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that would be fun to get a collaboration of all the worst examples of things that then maybe we can all learn from them.
Yeah. I just got a request and I'll tell you about it, talk more about it to you later. I'll be looking into it. But one of the avenues we want to do more work with is people's church homes and communities of faith where people congregate and they come willingly, and the pastor has the spiritual responsibilities for his flock, but he's also looking out for them on lots of larger levels these days. And so we want to be able to do education in the community, do more of these lunch and learn kinds of opportunities, and bring our experts to you. And I know Scott has the heart of a teacher. I know Mike Dyer has the heart of a teacher, and we just want to make sure folks get well cared for in our world. So thanks for sharing a little time with us this afternoon. I know you're really busy, you got your hands full on a lot of things, but this has been super helpful, Scott. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure. I hope that any of the listeners out there learned, we were able to take away at least one or two nuggets that they can use in their journeys working with their aging loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah, don't be intimidated by words like fiduciary and powers of attorney. They're just words. Attorneys like Scott will break it down, make it real easy for everyone. We don't want people putting their heads in the sand. We want people to ask questions and make sure they're comfortable with all these things that might be foreign to them. So thank you so much, Scott, for breaking it down, making it so easy to understand. We will be back with you guys next season. I am grateful. We've had a great run of our experts sharing insights to what the pain points really are for families who are walking this road with a loved one. We are here for you. Scott's contact information will be here in the video. So if there's anything we can do to connect you to Scott and the firm, please let our office know. Our ambassador and family advocate will be happy to guide you. Scott, we hope folks will call you too and want me to come talk to you if they need that kind of help for their preparation for a little loved one. So thanks again. We'll get out of here. It's been wonderful to spend time with you. Thanks so much.